I'm your host, Annie Bowles, and this is News du Jour. Hey you guys, and welcome back to the News du Jour, a calmer space to consume the news. So we have a lot to fit into today's episode, and that includes some reminders and announcements. So I'm just going to jump right into it and try and go quickly so that we don't go over on time today. But I'm going to go ahead and apologize in advance if we do. I'm sorry. Anywho, our first reminder, this weekend is Labor Day weekend here in the US, so I will be taking off Monday, which means I'm not going to be producing a podcast episode either Sunday or Monday. So unfortunately, the next episode, after tomorrow's that you guys will hear will be Wednesday. I know that's a little bit confusing, but when these holiday weekends happen, I really have to take some time to unplug, or else I would go crazy in producing this podcast around the clock. So I really appreciate your patience and just wanted to give you guys the heads up. But also, just like we mentioned on yesterday's episode, if you didn't hear yesterday's episode, I wanted to make sure you knew that this Friday we are launching merch for News du Jour with our new logo and branding. So starting this Friday, aka tomorrow, you guys will be able to shop that new merch with our bright red logo. Think sweatshirts, trucker hats, mugs, stickers, and more. We also know that a ton of you guys listen with your kiddos. So for the first time ever, we will have a kids News du Jour hat for your little one. And there's actually a matching adult size so that you can twin with your babies and get informed together while wearing your cute hats. The merch will be available, of course, on our website, www.sugarfreemedia.co/shop, or if you end up on the homepage, just click the shop tab. There will also be discount codes available for Labor Day weekend, so make sure you're following us on social media in order to get those codes. There's a couple things you have to do in order to get them, but we will also have those discount codes apply to all Sugar-Free Media merch. So if you're a fan of the brand overall and you like something else that we have in our shop, it will be a 25% off code for all of our merch. So get excited, follow us on social, go get that code. Okay, and for today, we have one mini story, and then we have, 4 stories, but they are long, so let's jump in. First up, our mini story. Prominent U.S. Senator Mitch McConnell has now frozen up twice in front of cameras, you guys. Remember how that happened before, where he was in DC and he basically had to be escorted off camera at a press conference because he had stopped talking mid-sentence and seemingly could not speak? Well, this has happened again, and this time he was speaking to reporters in Kentucky. He is 81 years old, and like many other U.S. leaders, he is testing the limits of the human body. I really hope that he's okay, and I hope he will take the time necessary to recover from whatever is going on. Our thoughts are with him and his family. So first up, of course, we have to cover Idalia today. I wanted to issue a content warning here. This story, of course, has to do with a natural disaster. So people up to their bellies in storm water, holding pet carriers and umbrellas, making their way to safety, downed bridges, downed trees, downed power lines. Florida is really going through it, y'all. People are being pulled out from their homes. Hundreds of thousands, almost 500,000 people are left without power, according to poweroutage.us, which is the leading outage tracker just so you know. So if you ever wanted to track where power outages are around the United States, I don't know why you'd want to do that, but if you ever want to look it up, poweroutage.us is the best outlet for that. Idalia gathered strength to become a Category 4 hurricane just before making landfall in Florida. She's now headed up towards Georgia and South Carolina as of the time I'm recording this. More than 900 flights were delayed or canceled. We already know of 2 deaths related to this storm, and search and rescue efforts are currently underway throughout the Big Bend region. Luckily, the area seemed to be pretty well evacuated as people are really learning to take these storms and fires more seriously in this climate era. Our prayers are with you, Florida, and we'll keep you guys posted. Again, if you're in any of these areas, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, make sure to tune in to your local weather channels and heed all of the warnings. So for our next 2 stories, we're first going to cover Giuliani in some of his legal proceedings and then Trump in some of his legal proceedings. Let's get into it. So a federal judge ruled in a defamation lawsuit against Giuliani for lies he spoke about election poll workers, and Giuliani has been found liable by the judge. If you guys remember, as a part of this case, Giuliani had formally admitted to the court that he had indeed fabricated the things that he said about these poll workers. He lied, and he told the court and the nation that he did so. So then the question became, did these lies do these women damage? That was the big legal question. And the answer, as this judge has ruled, is that yes, these lies did do these women damage. This allows for the court case to proceed to a trial where I'm pretty sure a jury, don't quote me on that part, but it will be decided how much he owes these 2 women, which are a mother and daughter pair. What's more, the judge was really annoyed with Giuliani. Her name is Judge Beryl Howell, and she might be my new favorite person. She called out the fact that Giuliani was trying to play the victim in court. And this is a phenomenon we see a lot from men in court. Men who have done terrible things, most often to women, statistically speaking, will then go into court and act like they are a victim for having to face the consequences of their chosen actions. Giuliani lied about these women. He lied about how they did their job repeatedly, publicly. He called them criminals in front of the whole country. And now he's somehow the victim? No. Not going to stand for Judge Beryl Howell. And she said that this has actually caused procedural problems. Here's exactly what she said about it. Quote, donning a cloak of victimization might play well on the public stage to certain audiences, but in a court of law, this performance has served only to subvert the normal process of discovery in a straightforward defamation case. End quote. As someone who is really into true crime, this quote was so satisfying to me because we've seen it time and time again where men who are accused of rape, murder, stalking, they come into court and suddenly they have MS or diabetes, or they continually talk about how they don't have money to pay for things, etc. Playing the victim in the face of your actual victim might be the biggest act of cowardice that exists. Not going to stand in Judge Howell's courtroom. She ruled that Giuliani will also be responsible for paying the $90,000 in legal fees that these 2 women have racked up in trying to fight his lies in court. And again, the trial will decide how much these 2 women are owed personally. But as we have mentioned before, Rudy has had to sell his New York City apartment because he is simply running out of money. He does not have a fan base to fundraise off of the way that Trump does, and he is currently unable to practice law because his law license is under review, and he may even be disbarred due to all of these lies. We'll definitely keep you guys posted. So now we are going to shift into talking about Trump and one of his ongoing legal cases. So if you guys remember, we've talked a lot about the 4 criminal indictments against Trump. But before any of those criminal cases were going on, Letitia James had brought a civil lawsuit against the former president in the state of New York. This trial will take place, or it's slated to take place, in New York in October. And through this case, Miss James is seeking to bar the former president or any of his children from running their family company and have them pay a fine of approximately $250 million for inflating property values by up to $2.2 billion. But just yesterday, Letitia said, you know what? Seems like Mr. Trump has a lot going on right now, so maybe a judge can just decide this case for us without actually having to go to trial. So she filed to have a judge rule on the case, saying that the fraud was so obvious that it would be easy for a judge to come to a conclusion and that it didn't need to actually go to trial. Mr. Trump's attorneys, meanwhile, are trying to get the entire case thrown out. So we'll have to wait and see what happens here, but we'll definitely keep you guys posted. Stay tuned. And this brings us to our final story today. I had to tell you guys about this one. So insane. A woman with a live worm in her brain. So this story will definitely keep me up at night. In Australia, a 64-year-old woman went to the hospital for a brain surgery. As the surgeon was conducting her procedure, she felt something strange with her instruments. She grabbed the unknown object, pulled it out, and to the shock of everyone there, it was a live, wiggling worm at the end of her tool. She said that she jumped out of shock and quickly threw the worm into a nearby dish. The worm was then immediately taken to an infectious disease specialist who immediately knew what it was: a roundworm. This specific type of worm has never been found inside of a mammal, let alone alive inside of a human or in their brain. It's typically found in freaking pythons, okay? So you have to remember, this is happening in Australia, where wildlife is very different from ours here, and this woman lived on a lake where pythons are very common. However, she didn't have any contact with these pythons that she knew of, so this was still very strange. After taking a closer look at her lifestyle, doctors have determined that she likely caught the parasite by gathering and eating warrigal greens, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, which are a native vegetable that grows around her home in the same area where these pythons live. She likely ingested the parasite through some of the dirt on the greens, which just, that's so scary. Prior to her brain surgery, she had experienced a dry cough, abdominal pain, diarrhea, fever, and night sweats. Then months and months later, she had the onset of some strange symptoms like depression, forgetfulness, things like that. So that's when a brain scan showed an unknown object towards the front of her brain. It is believed, though, that she still has larvae or juvenile worms in her lungs and liver and maybe even elsewhere in her body. This woman is honestly so lucky to have gotten this parasite out safely, though, from her brain. But there's a big takeaway here, which is foraging for food is great, but be sure to wash it thoroughly and any tools that you used before eating it. I'm not going to forget this one. And that is the news du jour. Today, I wanted to leave you guys with the quote: "One day, your life will flash before your eyes. Make sure it's one worth watching." If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on whatever podcast platform you use to listen. A rate and review or shout out on social media would mean the world to us and help us be able to keep creating the news du jour. But the best way to support all of our work is to become a patron at www.patreon.com/sugarfree media. You can also follow us on social media under sugarfreemedia.co on Instagram and just sugarfreemedia, all one word, on TikTok. Any little noises you may hear in the background are my rescue pup. He has a little separation anxiety and always records with me. We appreciate you listening and look forward to telling you about the news again next time on News du Jour.
Broadcasting from Oklahoma.